Back on the Nation at 5 with the latest coming in from Jammu and Kashmir, where an infiltration bid has gone south for the terrorists. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to the details, we have to tell you that on the 26th of July, in the run-up to the 5th of August and also the 15th of August, we told you that terrorists were waiting to infiltrate. Terrorists were getting desperate, and we had also highlighted that there were terror clusters in Naushera, Muzaffarabad, Kotli, which are being manned by the Lashkar, the Al-Badr, the Hizbul, and of course the Jaish. Now, we told you that how these launch pads are just 2 to 3 kilometers from sectors like Naushera, Tangdar, Poonch and Rajouri in Jammu and Kashmir, and that the jihadis were getting desperate to infiltrate. Now what we are showing to you are these visuals of that capture the movements of terrorists. We will now show you the movements, and this is proof of the fact that these terrorists are desperate, they're waiting, they're getting impatient, and they want to infiltrate. Now, what you're seeing, these visuals, the visuals clearly show that in the Naushera sector, terrorists were trying to infiltrate. There are two of them who are trying to make their way. Suddenly they stop and then they explode because they seem to have stepped on a landmine. And that's what's happened. An infiltration bid was foiled because of the landmines which have been put in place. And these two terrorists were killed. The bodies of these two terrorists have also been recovered. Now, we're given to understand that there is also another terrorist who's been caught alive. But before we get to that, let's try and go across to our guest for more details and also to Tejinder Sodhi joining us at this point for more details. We'll try and connect with Tejinder in just a bit. But what stands out in these visuals, ladies and gentlemen, very clearly is the fact that the infiltration is happening. Jihadis are being pushed onto Indian soil and they are coming in from the enemy territory. Major General Dhruv C. Katoch, Director, India Foundation, and Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow, ORF and Strategic Affairs Expert, with us this evening. Namaste, gentlemen. Thank you very much. General Katoch, should this or should this not be treated as a brazen attempt to infiltrate? And is this not a ceasefire violation then?
Thank you, Anand. Yes, I agree with you on both the counts. It is a brazen attempt by Pakistan to send in infiltrators. And on the second point, a violation of the ceasefire, I have been talking about this for some years now. Every single terrorist who is sent by the Pakistan army is a violation of the ceasefire. Every single UAV which crosses over is a violation of the ceasefire. Unfortunately, we have not been reacting against the Pakistan army, which we should. Now, that is the place where we need to take action. And all the, to put it very simply, Anand, we know where these terrorists have come from. There is a Pakistani military post on either side. It may be a kilometer or 2 kilometers away. Those posts have provided military support to these terrorists. We have to treat all those posts as enemy and erase them from the face of the earth. Unless we take action against the Pakistan military, they are not going to understand the language which we are trying to convey to them. Anand.
Gee, now I got more information from what's been seized from these terrorists. We've got information of that too. This is what we have. Seizures from Pakistani terrorists killed in Naushera, arms, ammunition, and also Pakistani currency has been recovered from the terrorists who were blown up because they stepped onto a landmine while trying to infiltrate, attempting to infiltrate. So the footage very clearly shows their attempt to infiltrate, the location, and then them being blown to bits. But this is what's been recovered. Huge amount of ammunition, arms, Pakistani currency has also been recovered from these terrorists. Sushant Sareen, how should India respond? Should we just put out more landmines and think that they get blown to bits? Or is it time for another surgical strike? Should we stop at these landmines or should we strike back and hard?
Despite the fact that I entirely agree with what General Katoch has said, and I think purely on the facts of the situation, General Katoch is correct. But I think the calculation at the level of the government is somewhat different. I think the calculation at the level of the government is that, some very low-level infiltration is taking place. Is it worthwhile to, undo the ceasefire at this point in time? That's an option that can always be exercised. Or does the ceasefire or the benefits that we get from the ceasefire serve the purpose much more than retaliate. Number one. Number two, because it's not crossing a certain threshold level as of now. Number two, I think there is also a strategic angle to it that why bail out the Pakistan army by carrying out offensive and hostile action at this point in time when Imran Khan
Right.
is doing your job for you. So the Pakistan
Right.
army already is having its back to the wall vis-a-vis all the criticism which is coming its way. So why should we resurrect the Pakistan army at this point in time? Perhaps that could be yet another calculation in the minds of the government. There is also another factor which is at play, which is that, look, because there is the ceasefire and things are not crossing a point, uh, do you really want to disturb the status quo?
Right.
So I think, look, I agree that the ceasefire provides a kind of a covering fire to the Pakistanis. But as long as it stays at a very, very low level, it's fine. The concerning part, however, Anand, is that a lot of the infiltration is taking place on the Jammu sector. And what we
Right.
have seen over the last few months is a spike in, acts of terrorism in the Jammu region, in
Right.
Rajouri, in Dota, in these kind of places. Uh, we've seen two Fidain attacks over the last 6 odd months.
Yes.
So that
Sundwan
is
also.
a
Yeah.
matter of concern, and obviously it's these kind of characters who are, coming across the line of control. But even then, the damage has been quite limited. It hasn't really crossed the threshold of tolerance. So I think even though it's providing some covering fire, I think in the when you take the sum total of it, perhaps the calculation of the government is that the ceasefire serves our interest better than
Right.
doing anything precipitate about it.
Right. I've got Tejinder Sodhi also with us on the phone line before I bring in General Katoch. Tejinder, so there have been some recoveries from these terrorists. Were there only two of them, or were there others too who are injured and have been caught alive?
Yes, Anand, see, one terrorist who was injured, he has been caught alive. And you see, one interesting part is which shows the human side of the Indian army, that this terrorist who was on a suicide mission, he was caught alive by the Indian army. Then he was taken to the Indian Army's hospital where the soldiers of the Indian Army, they gave their blood to save the life of this Pakistani terrorist. Even the doctors of the Indian Army, they treated this Pakistani terrorist, and within few minutes from now, this terrorist would be speaking to the media, wherein he would be telling the media how, while the Pakistan army trained him to cross over the line of control and to get killed here on a suicide mission, it was the Indian army which saved him while he was injured. He was evacuated to the hospital where a soldier from the Indian army donated his blood to save his life, and the doctors from the Indian army, they saved his life. So it clearly shows the human side of the Indian army, while the Indian army ensures that anybody who picks up gun and tries to cross over to the Indian side to carry out sabotage, to carry out terror activities, they are eliminated. But on the other side, you see the Indian army saved the life of one of the injured terrorists by treating him in the hospital, providing him all the medicines. And now this terrorist, he would be telling the media how Pakistan army trained him to die on a suicide mission. And as you spoke about the recoveries which have been made, large quantity of arms, ammunition have been recovered from those two terrorists who were killed by our soldiers while they were trying to infiltrate into the Indian side. Large quantity of Pakistani currency was also recovered from their possession. So it clearly shows the security forces, they had the input that large number of terrorists, they are waiting in the launch pads on the other side of the line of control. Even the border action teams which have the Jawans from the Pakistan Army Special Operations Group, they have been deployed on those launch pads to cross over and to carry out attacks, surprise attacks on Indian soldiers on the Indian side of the line of control. This has happened in the past, wherein those bad teams, they carried out surprise attacks on our Jawans. We lost some Jawans in the recent past, in past also, but now these terrorists, they are getting a befitting response. Yes, Anand.